Hello, dear friends. Today I have a long story for you with a magnificent revenge at the end. Jim worked in the Army's intelligence division, and he is married to Anne. While in the Army, he had the opportunity to work with two CIA agents, and became good friends with them. One night when Jim and Anne were having a good time together, Anne called out another man's name. The story is so long that my computer literally wouldn't be able to mount it all at once. Well then, let's begin. I am Jim Reynolds. I attended the University of Colorado after high school and graduated as a nuclear engineer. I had been in ROTC during college, so I entered the US Army after graduation, where I was a second lieutenant in military intelligence. My first 2 years were training, but in the last 2 years I got to do some actual intelligence work and was promoted to first lieutenant. I enjoyed it so much that I signed up for a second 4 years. Of course, being offered the rank of captain and an increase in pay did not hurt either. During that time I did some deep intelligence with two spooks from the CIA, who later became good friends. They always dressed in black suits and wore mirrored sunglasses, so I called them my personal men in black. When I left the service after 8 years, I set up my own consulting company, and continued to do work for the Department of Defense, DoD, and the CIA. I also do some consulting work for the suppliers to the military. My wife knows very little about my actual work because most of it is classified. I met and dated my wife Anne at the engineering college during our senior year. She graduated with a degree in architectural engineering. We married after our graduation and just before I went into the Army. She moved back east with me while I was in the service and worked for NIS. When I left, we moved back to Colorado where I set up my company. She found a nice job with a large architectural firm in Denver, and she loves her work. Anne is a beautiful woman, and I often wonder exactly how I was able to convince her to marry me. She is average height and is a strawberry blonde redhead with C-cup breasts and a lovely butt. We have always had a great relationship. Anne had dated several men during college until we started dating in our last year of college. Her main interest is to give blows. She loves sex and will do anything that I have asked of her. We never had any children because of our careers. We both realized that we had no time to give to children and that it would be unfair to bring them into a relationship. Monday. It was a perfect day even if it was a Monday. Work is perfect because I own my own consulting firm, which means that I don't have a boss. I built an addition onto our home for my office, so that I can work from home and not fight the traffic getting to work in the city, another reason for it to be a perfect day. My wife of 20 years, Anne, came home from her workplace today and fixed us a wonderful dinner. She is still as beautiful as the day I married her, and she doesn't look her age of 42. Yes, it is a perfect day. To finish off a perfect Monday, I was planning to have a night of making love. Well, at least I thought that making love would be the finish of a perfect day. We used to make love 4 or 5 times a week at the beginning of our marriage, but over the years the frequency has diminished, but the quality stayed very high. In the last 3 months my wife has cut it down to only Friday nights, which does not make me happy or meet my needs. She also has become a real witch during that time. Probably not enough sex. I have not been getting enough sex lately, so I decided that we would make love tonight to finish off a perfect day. I was not waiting until Friday. During dinner I had told my wife that we were going to make love that night. And my body is in need of relief, so we are going to make love tonight. I am not waiting for Friday night, I said. I am very tired tonight. Maybe tomorrow night or the next night, my wife said. No. We are going to make love tonight, I said firmly. I think you should have more consideration for me. I work hard and am very tired when I get home from work, my wife said. My dear wife, I work as hard as you do. My blue balls have been building up for several weeks because of your Friday nights only business, so tonight I am going to get laid. Either you can do it with me, or I will go into Denver and bring back a hole to do it in front of you. Either way I am having sex tonight. I am tired of you restricting us to only once a week. It is a wife's duty to keep her husband satisfied, I said. My wife appeared to be angry but said nothing. She got up from the table and started collecting the dinner dishes, then putting them in the dishwasher. I didn't want to put up with her attitude, so I got up and went to my office to finish up some work. About 9:30 p.m. I had finished up some reports that were coming due. It's a perfect day when you get all your work done. Now it is time for some sex. From my wife's attitude I could tell that it would be sex for my gratification only. I came out of my office and I found my wife watching one of her favorite TV shows. I walked over to the TV and turned it off. I am certain that pissed her off even more. Time to go to bed, I said. My wife sat there giving me the I am angry with you look. I have had enough of her being a witch. Upstairs now, I said. My wife got up and headed for the stairway, and I followed her up. She went into her bathroom and slammed the door closed. My wife uses a diaphragm for birth control. She always wants to put it in behind closed doors like it is a secret. I undressed and crawled into bed to wait for her. I usually take a shower before bed, but today I took it before dinner, so that we could get to bed sooner. I even shaved again to make certain that I didn't leave any whisker burns. My wife came out of the bathroom and crawled into bed beside me. She didn't say anything but gave a big sigh. She was lying on her back with her legs apart. Certainly not very sexually exciting. She was making it clear that she was only going to do the minimum. I decided that rather than just get myself off, I would show her what our lovemaking was supposed to be like. To finish off a perfect day, I decided to do everything that I could to give her the best sex that we have had in several years. Everything was going well until she screamed, "Duck me hard, Tony." Wait, who's Tony? I immediately stopped and stared at my wife. She opened her eyes to see why I had stopped ducking her. "Honey, why did you stop?" "I was ready to come," Anne said. "You just called me Tony." "Who's Tony?" I said angrily. I pulled out of my wife and sat on the bed staring at my wife. "Oh God. Honey, it was just a slip of the tongue. It's nothing," my wife said. "I asked you who the duck is, Tony," I said. My wife sat up in bed and had a confused look on her face. Anne can be very stubborn, and I could see that she wasn't going to tell me, so I got out of bed and grabbed my clothes. I headed down the stairs and straight for the kitchen where I dressed. I found my Crocs by the patio door and put them on. My wife came down the stairs and walked into the kitchen without putting her clothes back on. "Honey, please come back to bed. Neither one of us got to finish. Please. Let's go back and finish," she said. "When I asked you for sex tonight at dinner, you were too tired, and now you are begging me to duck you. That isn't going to happen, and I am not Tony," I said angrily. I walked over to her and held her by the shoulders. "Go back upstairs and put some clothes on. We are going to have a little talk here at the kitchen table," I said calmly. She looked at me with a frown and didn't move. "Anne, go get dressed now," I said firmly. She slowly turned around and headed up the stairs. I hurried to the laundry room. Every day when my wife comes home, she always puts her purse on the counter in the laundry room. I found her purse exactly where it always is. I searched through her purse, keys, lipstick, pill case. At the bottom I found her cell phone, so I put it and her keys in my pocket. There was a zippered pocket on the inside of her purse. I opened it and found a strip of rubbers, 7 in total. I grabbed the rubbers and headed for my office. In my office I opened my briefcase. My laptop was all charged up and tucked in the briefcase ready for my field work. I put my cell phone, my wife's cell phone and her keys on top of my laptop, and I put the rubbers in my pocket to confront my wife. We have a landline mostly for my work at home, but some of our friends call us on it in the evenings and weekends, because we don't answer our cell phones when we are not working. We have 2 wireless phones for the landline, one in my office and one in the kitchen. I put the one from my office in my briefcase and closed it. I hurried back to the kitchen with my briefcase. I grabbed the wireless phone from there and put it into my briefcase, which I then set under the kitchen table. I sat down at the kitchen table and waited for my wife. Anne came into the kitchen dressed in jeans, a sweatshirt and bobby socks. "Fix us some glasses of iced tea, and let's have a little talk," I said softly. She made 2 glasses of iced tea and put a glass in front of me, and put one in front of her as she sat down at the table. "We are going to have an adult discussion. I am not going to get angry or yell, and I don't want you to start in with your witching. I expect you to tell me the truth," I said quietly and calmly. My wife just stared at me and said nothing. "Tell me, who's Tony?" I asked. Anne looked down, just staring at her glass of tea, and said nothing. "We are going to sit here until you start talking with me, even if it is until tomorrow morning," I said. "I have to get some sleep because I have to go to work tomorrow," Anne said. "I don't give a dime about your work. Anne, tell me, who's Tony?" I asked softly. When I am really angry, I get very calm and I talk softly. It is something that I learned while I was in the army when I was interrogating people. Tonight may be another interrogation, but with my wife this time. We sat quietly for several minutes. Anne was staring at her glass of tea and I was staring at her. And, since you won't talk to me and since I need to calm down, I am going for a short drive. I will be gone about 1 hour. During that time, I want you to get your head together so that we can discuss this serious matter. When I get back, I will ask you some questions and I want answers from you, not silence. I have your car keys and all our phones so that you cannot leave, and you cannot call anyone, especially Tony. Just sit here and prepare to tell me about him, I said calmly. I grabbed my briefcase and headed for the laundry room. I walked into the garage and got into my car. I drove away and headed for a park that was several blocks away. There were no other cars in the park, so I parked in the first spot. I sat there practicing breathing techniques that I used to lower my blood pressure and to calm me down. Who am I angry with? I was angry at my wife because she has never been one to even look at other men, so why duck around now? I decided that I was mostly angry at this Tony person because he seduced my wife. All I could think about was making Tony disappear when I find out who he is. I opened my briefcase and took out Anne's cell phone. I was surprised to find it locked. She had never locked it before. The phone required 4 digits to unlock, so I tried our address, then I tried the last 4 digits of our landline phone, then I tried her birthday, finally I tried the last 4 digits of her social security number. Bingo. It worked. I looked at her phone call record, there were none in the trash folder. Next I checked her texts, there were none in the trash. She is keeping her phone clean and locked up. Something is afoot. I took out my laptop and started it. I need to get on the internet. There were several hotels in the area, and I found one with free Wi-Fi. I connected to the internet and I logged in as Anne. Anne has a company laptop which she keeps at work, so all her personal social media is done on my desktop computer. Since we both use my computer, I can see all her passwords. I checked Anne's contacts list, but there was no Tony. I looked at her emails and there were none from a Tony. Next I checked Anne's Facebook page. The first thing I saw was that her messenger icon was lit up, so I clicked on it. Up came a message from Tony Martin dated this morning and it said, "There one." I scrolled back to the beginning of the Tony messages and found that they started about 8 weeks ago. The first few messages appeared to be compliments to Anne, but about 5 weeks ago the subject matter in the messages changed. There was a message about how good lunch was and how much he enjoyed the special. Following that message, some different messages appeared. The first of the newest messages appeared to be just an address, 3450 Ridge Avenue 122, 12, and a time maybe. The rest of the messages were days of the week, and numbers which I figured out were times for those days. So Tony must be her lover, and he is telling her the days and times to meet him at the address, probably his address. It appears that she has met him at his place 6 times and generally at 11:30 a.m. or 12 noon. From the last message, it appears that she is to meet him this coming Thursday at 1 p.m. I intend to not let that happen. Just then a car pulled in behind me, and spotlights were shining in my back window. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a policeman approaching the side of my car. I rolled down my window and greeted the policeman. "Good evening. What are you doing here at this hour?" he asked. "My wife and I had an argument and I came here to calm down," I said. "Yeah, I have to do that too sometimes. You cannot stay here all night, it is against the city ordinances," he said. "I will be here in about half an hour more, and then I will go home and face the music," I said. "Good idea. Even if you are right, just tell her you are sorry." "It works for me," he said, and then returned to his car and left the park. My wife works for a large architectural firm in Denver, so I went to their webpage on the internet. I found the key employees page and started looking for someone named Tony. I saw my wife's photo and her brief bio. She is the manager of their research group. They check out vendors and their products. The very last person in their key employees list was a Tony Martin who was hired about 3 to 4 months ago from a Dallas firm to manage the tenant finish design group. His photo showed a very handsome man with black hair and dark eyes. He was clean-shaven and looked to be younger than my wife and I by maybe 10 years or more. I looked up Tony Martin on Facebook. There were several, but only one was an architect. His cover photo showed him standing beside a new black BMW. He had no photos of a wife or kids on his page. That is odd. I looked under about on his page and found out that he was married to a Linda Martin. It was a hot link, so I clicked on it. Her Facebook page showed that she was a very attractive redhead with 2 red-headed young boys. It showed that they lived in Dallas, Texas. There were recent photos of the boys at school, so his wife apparently had not moved to Denver as yet. I opened Google Maps and put in the address from Tony's message to Anne. The address was for an upscale condominium complex. It is all beginning to tie together. I turned off my laptop and put it back in my briefcase. I picked up my wife's cell phone again and looked up her telephone contacts. There was no Tony or Martin, but I found a TM with a phone number and address. The address matched the address in the Facebook message from Tony. I have a burn phone that I keep in my glove compartment for my work. I took it out and called the number for TM. A sleepy-sounding man answered the phone. "I am trying to reach Tony Martin," I said. "I am Tony Martin," he asked. "Do you know Ann Miller?" I asked. "Yes, she works with me." "Who is this?" Tony asked. "I am your worst nightmare," I said and hung up. This is definitely the guy who is ducking my wife. I put his phone number and address into my cell phone. I had calmed down a lot sitting in the park. I realized that making Tony disappear was a bad idea. I decided to duck with him and then teach him a lesson. I would use some techniques that I learned in the army. First was sleep deprivation. It makes a person unable to concentrate and makes them easily upset. I could do that by calling him a lot at night. Also, I would do small things to irritate him. Hopefully the two techniques would cause him to believe that someone is out to get him. When the time is right, I will do something painful to him when he least expects it. I felt that I knew enough about my wife's lover now, so I headed back home. I had been gone a little over an hour. When her overhead garage door opened, I saw the door leading into the laundry room open and Anne was standing there. I got out of the car with my briefcase and met her at the door. She gave me a quick kiss and said, "Honey, I was afraid that you weren't coming back. There is no way that I am going to leave you alone, so that you and your Tony can duck all the time," I said and moved to the kitchen. I sat down at the table and waited for my wife to sit down. She brought a pitcher of fresh tea to the table and sat down. "Are you ready to talk to me now? I want you to tell me the truth. If you lie, I will know it, and the consequences will be very harsh. Do you understand?" I asked. She nodded her head yes. "So, tonight we were making love and you said, 'Duck me hard, Tony.' Do you remember saying that, Anne?" I asked. She lowered her head and she nodded yes. "Good. Now tell me about Tony," I said. It was a slip of the tongue. It meant nothing. "Honest, honey. I am sorry," she said. "Okay, you won't tell me who Tony is, so let's approach this in another way. You said, 'Duck me hard, Tony.' It was so natural for you to say it that you didn't realize that you had said it. However, you said that it was a slip of the tongue. Right?" I asked. "Yes," my wife said. "Well, I believe that you and Tony have ducked a lot because it came out of your mouth too easily because you have said it many times before. I believe that you were fantasizing that Tony was ducking you tonight instead of me. You had your eyes closed and in your mind it was Tony ducking you, and that is why you said it," I said. Anne looked up at me and I saw tears forming in her eyes. "In your mind, it was Tony ducking you and not me. I cannot begin to tell you how badly it hurts me to think that you are imagining another man is ducking you rather than me, and to make it worse, you called me by his name and not mine. So, Anne, what am I, a human eggplant to help you finish while you dream of Tony? Anne, am I right?" I asked. Anne said nothing but started crying hard. I put my hand under her chin and raised her head up so that she could look me in the eyes. "I am going to remind you of something important about our marriage, so I want you to look at me and pay attention. When you married me, you not only gave me your love, but you also gave me your kitty, forsaking all others and all that in our vows. Yes, your kitty is mine. You carry it around for me so that it is ready when I desire to use it. Likewise, I gave you my stick. It is yours and I take care of it for you. So your kitty was not your property to share with another man. It is mine, not yours. You actually stole my property and used it for your selfish purposes. You took my kitty without my knowledge and let someone else use it, and in this state that is illegal. It is called adultery. Do you understand?" I asked. Anne just looked at me and said nothing. Her crying had stopped, but her nose was running. "Go get some tissues and come back here. We have much to talk about," I said. Anne went into the kitchen and brought back a box of tissues. She wiped her eyes and blew her nose. "Now, let's get back to your affair. So I know that you are ducking Tony, but you will not tell me about him. I believe that you have feelings for him, that is why you are protecting him. Since you won't tell me about him, I had to find out about your lover on my own. I know that he is Tony Martin, who lives at 3450 Ridge Avenue, number 122. He was recently hired by your firm to manage the tenant finish group. He was previously with an architectural firm in Dallas, Texas," I said. Anne's face went white, and her eyes were as big as saucers. How did Anne started to say, but I interrupted her. Did you know that he was married to a beautiful redhead, and they have 2 boys? His wife and kids haven't moved to Denver yet, I said. I saw the ring on his hand, but there was no one living at his condo and no photos of a wife. I thought maybe he was separated or divorced, Anne said. Did you think to ask him? Of course not. You were only interested in ducking him, I said. Anne just stared at me. How did you? She started to say, but I interrupted her again. So my next question is, when were you ducking Tony? On the weekends you and I are together all the time, I even go shopping with you. You come home promptly every night after work, and we spend the evenings together, and then we go to bed together, so the only time that we are not together is when you are at work. That tells me that you are ducking Tony during your work hours. Therefore, you must do it over your lunch, possibly a long lunch hour. Is that right? I asked Anne. Yes, Anne replied. My next question is, where? I know that you didn't bring him to our home because I am here all day working in my office. So I would guess that you meet him at his condo. Maybe he gave you a key so that you could slip in, I said, and I took out Anne's keys from my pocket. This key is for our house, this is your car key, this key is for your work, and this key is for your office door at work. That leaves this key. Is it to his place? I asked. Anne did not answer me, but just nodded her head yes. I put the keys back into my pocket. She was white as a sheet and her hands were shaking. So my next questions are, how long has this been going on and how many times have you ducked him? Tony hasn't been in Denver very long, so I would say he started giving you his attention maybe 6 or 8 weeks ago. However, you have just recently started ducking him. You have ducked him 6 times at his condo, and he is planning to duck him again this coming Thursday at 1 p.m. at his place. Is that correct? I asked. Anne said nothing but had a surprised look. She tried to take a drink of tea, but her hands were shaking so badly that she spilled some on the table. I took out a string of 7 rubbers from my pocket and held them up to Anne. She gasped when she saw them. I see that you make him wear rubber. That is very smart of you. There are 7 rubbers here, and they are purchased by the dozen in a box. That leaves 5 that you have used, but you have ducked him 6 times. So I would guess that the first time you weren't prepared. That means that tomorrow we have to get tested for STDs. That first time you didn't know it was going to happen, but Tony forced you into it. Didn't he? I asked. Tony didn't force me to do it. He just made out with me and then undressed me and it just happened. I didn't know that we were going to have sex, so no, I didn't have my diaphragm in, Anne explained. So you went bareback with him. Could you be pregnant? I will tell you right now that I will not raise another man's child, I said. I am not pregnant. I have had a period since then, Anne said. Where did you? Anne started to say, but I interrupted her again. Anne, did you forget that I worked in military intelligence when I was in the army? I know where to find information about people, I said. Anne slumped down in her chair. She wiped away the tears with the back of her hand and blew her nose on a tissue. Did you go down on him and swallow? I asked. Just the first time. We were making out in his car and I gave him one, but that is all we did that time at lunch. So I guess you would say that we had sex 7 times, Anne explained. But you did suck him when you were ducking at his place, for play but no coming. Am I right? I asked. Yes, Anne said. So you could have an STD in your mouth and throat. We are both getting our mouths and throats tested tomorrow morning, I said. Have you kissed me after being with him? I asked. After I was with him, I always took a shower when I came home. I brushed my teeth and used mouthwash, Anne said. Did you ever give me sloppy seconds? I asked. No. You and I have only been having sex on Fridays because Tony couldn't meet me on Fridays. That way I was clean for you, Anne replied. We have one more piece of business tonight, and then we can go to bed. Tomorrow you will call into work and tell them that you have a sinus infection, and you won't be coming in for the rest of the week. We need the time as we have much to do. Got it, I said. I will call in tomorrow as you requested. Honey, I am so sorry. Can you forgive me? Anne asked. No, I cannot. I think we are finished for tonight, but I need to run a quick errand right now. You go take a shower and crawl into bed. I will be back shortly, I said. Where are you going? She asked. You don't have a need to know. Go shower and clean up, I said. I locked my briefcase containing my laptop, both of our cell phones and our 2 landline phones, and left it in my office. Then I headed for the garage where I took out a box cutter from my toolbox. As I drove away from our house, I put Tony's address into the GPS system in my car and saved it as TM. I followed the directions and ended up at a very nice condominium complex. I found the one where Tony lived, number 122. I took out Anne's keys and held the mystery key in my hand. I looked for security cameras and saw none. I looked at Tony's door and observed that he did not have one of the doorbells with a camera, so I walked up to his door. The name of the manufacturer on the lock on the door matched the brand name on the key. I put the key into the lock and quietly unlocked his door. Yep, Tony has given my wife a key to his condo. They must be serious about each other. I walked away. When he finds his front door unlocked, it should upset him. Next, I looked for his car. It was easy to spot because there was only one black BMW, plus it was parked in front of Tony's place and had Texas license plates. I took my box cutter from my pocket and I proceeded to cut off the valve stems on his 4 tires and I put them in my pocket. In seconds, Tony had 4 flat tires. I sat down in my car and called Tony again on my burn phone. "Hello," he said. From his voice I could tell that he was sleeping. "You are going to need extra time to get to work tomorrow, so get up early," I said and hung up. Between the late-night phone calls, the unlocked front door and his 4 flat tires, I will have his attention now. I returned home. When I walked in our house, all the lights were out except for the stairway. I went to our bedroom and undressed. I crawled into the bed and found Anne was nude and waiting for me. "I was worried that you might not come back," she said. I lay down in bed beside her. "Does this mean that you are not kicking me out?" Anne asked. "No, it is just that the guest's bed is not made up for you yet. Tomorrow I want you to remove all the stuff you have put on the bed and make it up because you will be sleeping there," I said, and I turned on my side with my back to her. Tuesday. The next morning the alarm went off, so we both got up and dressed. Anne made us a nice breakfast. There was no talking during the meal. When we were finished and Anne had picked up the dishes, I gave her one of our wireless phones and reminded her to call into work. She placed a call and asked to take the rest of the week off as sick leave. I took back the wireless phone because I don't want her communicating with Tony. "I need to know that this affair is finished. There is no more Tony in your life," I said firmly to my wife. She hung her head down and softly said, "Yes, it is over." "Good. Then we have work to do," I said. I grabbed a handful of our nitrile surgical gloves from the kitchen and put them into my pocket. My wife uses them when she is cooking, especially when she handles meat or veggies. "We are going to get tested, and then I have some other things to do, so get your purse, and let's go," I said. I drove us to a nearby urgent care facility where they drew blood for STDs. I also had them swab my wife's throat and kitty to check for infections. They also swabbed my throat and the urethra opening of my stick. They told us the results would be ready in 3 days. When we got back in the car, I took out my burner phone from the glove compartment and I called Tony at his office. Anne provided his work number. He answered right away. "This is Tony Martin. How may I help you?" he said. "How was your drive to work this morning?" I asked and hung up. "What was that all about?" my wife asked. "I think he had car troubles this morning. I wanted to make certain that he was at work and not at home," I replied. Next, I brought up the TM address on my GPS in the car that I had saved last night. When I drove up to Tony's condo, Anne became very nervous. "Why are we here?" she asked. "Wait and see," I answered. I parked in front of his car, which still had 4 flat tires. He must have used a taxi or Uber to get to work. I put on the surgical gloves and had Anne do the same. I want no fingerprints. We walked up to his door and I used her key to open the door. Once we were both inside, I locked the door. "I assume you ducked on his bed. Where is it?" I asked. "This condo is owned by the firm. The master bedroom is locked and reserved for our clients. Tony bought his own bed and put it in one of the other bedrooms," Anne explained. Anne led me upstairs and down a short hallway to the bedroom. All that was in the bedroom was a queen-size bed and an alarm clock on the floor. I took out my box cutter and sliced open the pillows and spread the filling all around the room. Next I cut the sheets and blankets into pieces, and followed that with slicing open his mattress with a full-sized X. "My God, honey. What are you doing?" my wife asked. I wanted to make certain that you would not be sleeping here Thursday afternoon, I replied. Honey, I told you that it is over, Anne said. I ignored Anne and said, show me the bathroom that you guys used. She took me down the hall to a bathroom. It had his and hers sinks with a mirror above each sink. I noticed that on the counter next to one of the sinks were a hairbrush, hairspray, deodorant, an eyebrow pencil, lipstick, a toothbrush and toothpaste. You're serious about this guy. You were moving in, I said. It isn't like that. I had to look good when I went back to work, she said. Take your stuff with you. Do you have any clothes here? I said. Anne said, no, and started to pack all her stuff into her purse. I took her eyebrow pencil and wrote a hole on the mirror above his sink, and then gave it back to her. I took a wet washcloth and a towel, and I started wiping down the bathroom surfaces. Then I did all doorknobs and around the bed. We moved downstairs to the living room. There was just a love seat and a TV on the wall, but no laptop. I wiped everything down in there. Then I moved to the kitchen and did the same. I looked in the refrigerator and saw a couple of beer bottles and a half-gallon of milk and nothing else. I unplugged the refrigerator and hid the cord under the refrigerator. I stuffed some towels that were in the kitchen into the sink drain, and then I turned on the water. That will flood the kitchen, my wife said. Yes, I know. I think we are done here. Let's go, I said. We left and I locked the door with Anne's key. Next, I drove us to a Walmart and I bought a box of envelopes, a package of pens and this small notepad. I also went to their hardware department and had a duplicate key made of Tony's door key. Back in my car, I made Anne write a note to Tony that said that she would not be meeting him on Thursday, that the affair was over, and that she was returning his key as she would no longer need it. We put the note and the original key into the envelope, and Anne put Tony's name on the envelope. I drove to Anne's work and parked nearby. I told her to stay with the car, and I took the envelope to the front desk and told them to get it to Tony. We still had our gloves on so there would be no fingerprints. I drove us home and disposed of the surgical gloves in our garage waste. We went inside and I told Anne to sit down at the kitchen table again. We haven't finished discussing your affair. I sense that you have feelings for this guy. Christ. You had started moving in with him. All you needed were your clothes. When were you going to move them? I want you to look me in the eye and tell me that it is really over, I said firmly. Oh honey, I assure you that it is over. The things I had at his condo were just so that I looked okay when I went back to work. I had no intention of moving in with him. I love you, not Tony. He was just recreational sex. It meant nothing. I assure you that it is over, Anne said, and she moved to hug me, but I held up my hand to stop her. I am allowing you to stay here with me because I love you, and because I think that something is wrong with you. You have changed a lot recently and have been very hard to live with. In short, you became a witch. Every time I tried to talk to you, you would get angry with me. That is not normal. Until I found out about the affair, I have been thinking that you are having a mental problem. I even asked our family doctor if you were well. He assured me that you were physically well, but I worried that maybe something was wrong with your brain, because your changes were sudden and intense. When I married you, I agreed to stay with you through sickness and good health, so I saw my job as taking care of you, despite how you were treating me. I had no idea that you were cheating on me, and that was causing you to be angry with me. I put most of the blame for your affair on Tony. He is handsome and I am sure that he is persuasive. I am sure that he talked you into this, and you were stupid enough to believe the BS he was feeding you. He just wanted you in bed and doesn't care about you. I am planning to deal with him. As for you, I was disappointed to see that you had moved into his place. I now understand that the affair was not something that just happened, but rather something that you fully bought into, I said. Oh shiz. I have really messed everything up. I am sorry. My wife said. If you were drinking and had too much that resulted in a one-time fling, I could forgive you. But, you slept with him 6 times and you were moving in with him. Christ. This is serious. I said with anger in my voice. Have there been other mistakes with men as you called them in the past? I asked. No. I have only had sex with you and with Tony since we married, she replied. Why would you cheat on me? Aren't I good enough for you? I asked. I don't know why. It certainly had nothing to do with your performance in bed. It started as a friendship and just sort of evolved into sex. I enjoyed it so I kept going back, she said crying. A friendship that developed into ducking 6 times. You have to have mental issues or else you are just stupid, I said. Am I going to divorce you? It is too soon to make that decision. We have been together 20 years, so there is loyalty on my part. Besides, from the way you have been acting, I believe that there is something wrong with you. I feel obligated to take care of you until you get better, so I am leaving a divorce on the table for now. I am finished for now. Do you have anything that you want to say? I asked. Yes, I do. I am not stupid, but I did use poor judgment. I allowed myself to give him a blowjob. When I got away with that, I allowed myself to have sex with him, assuming that I would get away with it too. And in case you want to know, yes, the sex was quite good and I had good orgasms, there just was no love involved. I cannot justify any of those acts to myself or to you. Jim, I have never lied to you about anything. I have always been truthful with you. I never said I was out with the girls or out shopping when I was with Tony. I never took any time away from you to have an affair, I did it all on company time. I am salaried regardless of how much time I put into the firm. I have given the firm a lot of free overtime over the years, so I wasn't cheating the firm. Was I going to end it? Yes, I had decided not to see him Thursday, Anne explained. Anne thought for a minute and then said, I know that you are angry at Tony, but what you did at his place seems childish to me. What you saw me do to Tony's place was just one of several things that I have done to harass Tony in the last 24 hours. Each was insignificant, but each was meant to agitate him. When enough of these small irritating things build up, he will realize that someone is out to get him. Today was meant to show him that he is not safe inside of his condo, and that I know that he ducked my wife on that bed. I want to create some fear in his life. I want him looking over his shoulder all the time wondering what or when something else will happen. It wasn't childish but rather part of a coordinated attack on him, I explained. What other things did you do to him? Anne asked. Some of it is best not discussed, but I will say that I am disrupting his sleep, I said. Speaking of sleep, go make up the bed in the guest room. You will be sleeping in there. Oh my God. Does she really say I have never lied to you, or did I mishear it? Listen, women drive me crazy, I don't understand it. You find cheating in their phone, they accuse you of violating their privacy. Tell them to their face that they are cheating dogs, they say they never lied. Am I missing something in this life? Write your thoughts in the comments, and I'll go make the second part. I'll publish it tomorrow, as usual, no long waits.